There's an action movie currently doing the rounds called The Finest Hours. It's based on the story of the rescue from a tanker called the Pendleton off the coast of Massachusetts in America in 1952. The rescue was done by 4 very brave seamen aboard this US Coast Guard boat, and you can build a model of it from Glencoe Models. It's quite an old model, but it still makes up into a very reasonable representation of the boat. What do you get in the kit? Well, the usual parts, and you also get a leaflet celebrating the movie itself. It comes from Disney, and here's the bits and pieces packed in a polythene bag. So pair of scissors, open it out. Let's make sure you get all the parts, and if they've fallen off the runners, some people call them sprues, but technically they're runners, they should still be in the bag. It's about 40 parts in the kit. It's quite simple. So to build it, what do you need? Basic set of tools. Well, you need to glue it together. I use liquid cement. Most people do these days, but some people still like the old tube cement. It still works. You'll need things like a modelling knife, usual scalpel type of modelling knife. You'll need something to sand off the parts. A set of small files is always very, very useful, and very vital, a set of snippers, because you can use those to cut the runners, and just use as a dummy piece here like that. Don't be tempted to pull them off. I know it is tempting, but you'll always end up with a little raggedy edge there. But whatever you cut off anyway, you'll be needing the files to smooth the parts off. Other useful things are clamps. Now these are clothes pegs, as we call them in the UK, clothes pins in America, for holding parts together. Also very useful, these medical type of forceps that you can get from a lot of specialist hobby shops. Finally, some sanding paper of various grades to augment what you'll be doing with the files. So having got the tools sorted out, where do we actually start? Start with the largest section, which of course is the hull. Here you need the 2 halves, the deck section because it's sandwiched in between, and don't forget the rudder because that is also sandwiched in between. You can test fit the 2 halves together. You may find, because of the age of the tooling, there might be some rough edges along here, so it's very easy just to take the small file, sand them away, maybe a bit of sanding paper so that they fit together properly. Again, make sure the rudder is sandwiched in between. And to make it easier, here's one already done. I've used liquid cement on this to hold it together, and I also used some forceps and some of the clothes pegs to hold the 2 keel parts while the cement dried. Once that was done, it needs to be painted, because although most of the boat is white, below the waterline it is a brick red colour. The exact colour is a bit of a difficulty to ascertain, so I ended up masking it using, in this case it's Tamiya masking tape, for doing the very fine edges, and then because this is quite expensive, we back up with some ordinary tape. Don't use that originally, it won't give you a fine enough line. And you can see here, if I pull this away, that is the more cruder tape coming away, and you can see it tears quite easily. But if I take the actual Tamiya masking tape, you can see the sort of line you get using that tape. You won't get that using ordinary masking tape. There's another odd bit there to come away as well. And you can see both sides, that's a darker brown brick red, and that one's a lighter colour. Right. With the hull drying, you can turn your attention to what's above the deck, and here you've got the fore and aft sections and the main cabin, which itself is 4 parts. 2 bulkheads, the main section, and here the windows, windshield, whatever you want to call it. Putting those together, you'll end up with this, and that can be also painted white, but the window section is wood. So here we have it already done, with it painted in brown mahogany type of colour, and also with a little bit of masking there, so you can get a good line, as you can see there. This is the foredeck section. Here you'll note it has a number stamped in to it. This is actually not the correct boat that we're building, so you can actually remove it, because they weren't always fitted to these boats, with a very simple process of filing and sanding it off. After that you can take the bulkhead here using the clippers, cut it off, because that bit will be removed and it will be glued in position there. And then the railings, you see there's a section of them here. We use the two largest and the middle one there. They are fitted there, and you end up with something like that. You'll notice here it's also been painted a gloss white, but we've added the black surrounds for the running lamps and also for the porthole in the door. The running lamps will later be finished with silver and then covered with transparent red and green for port and starboard running lamps. You've got two other parts for the top of the boat. The forward and aft sections are where the crew can basically stand. This is the one with the cabin, this is the forward one. Here you'll note they've been painted the white and also then hand painted with the same type of mahogany cover. Also note the handholds, you can make them out of old bits of wire and just use the ordinary tape to fix them in position. This particular part also has a grating for getting the water out of the way and out into the bilges. So this one's been left on the runner so it can be sprayed white. That will be later taken off and fitted in position there. Finally, we've got all those bits and pieces that add to the model when it's finished. Here you've got the life belt, the wheel, the propeller, anchor and the ship's bell. These have been left on the runner. They're much easier to paint this way. They can later be snipped away, and the edges, the gate, that bit there is called the gate, just trimmed away with the file or the sandpaper. Note here all the painting's been done except for the ship's bell. That will be painted with bronze colour, more or less to match the propeller. We've also got the steering section that goes in the cabin. We've got the main mast, and we've got the railings here. Now they've started white. I've painted them black because the metallic colour goes much better over black than it does over white. And here's three of the finished ones, finished in aluminium or aluminum if you prefer. Finally, of course, there is arguably the most important part of the kit, the crewman. The boat is great, but it wouldn't be anything other without the crew on board. Now, unfortunately, in the actual story, there were 4 crew aboard. The kit only gives you 3 crew, but you can either perhaps get one from another kit or pretend the 4th crew member is below decks. Now, because of the age of the kit, we have this slight problem you sometimes get. They're called sink marks. You can just see it in the back of the pilot. These can very easily be solved. You use a model putty, take a little bit, you can probably apply it just direct to it, taking one of your modelling knives, wipe the excess across, and you can let it dry. They dry very, very quickly normally, and just sand it down, and it's as good as new. You can then fix the figures. I've fitted these with double-sided tape to close pegs so they can be painted. I've also cleaned up the various edges, and you can see here one has already had the face painted. The oilskins will be painted in yellow, and his life belt finished the same way as before in white and red. To support the model, Glencoe supply this 2-part base. Now again, because of the age of the tooling, you may find some edges need a little bit of touching up to get the fit together. You've also got a nameplate here. Now if you want to use that, the best way to do this is to paint it a colour, say white, then cover it over with tape. Then you can paint the rest of the base, which here, as you see, has been done as a dark blue. But of course, sea is not dark blue or just single colour. You've got the flecks of the white from the waves, and so that can be added by taking a pot of ordinary enamel paint, taking, probably you don't need to use a pristine brush, you can use an old brush. You do what's called dry brushing. You brush most of it off, and then you just hit the edge of the waves like that, just to give you, it doesn't matter exactly what the pattern, water is constantly moving. A little bit more, rub it off there, perhaps some a little bit thicker than other places, hit the edges of it, and you can see the way it's going to be building up. Then finally you can take that off and you've got your nameplate. And if you take some very fine glass paper, you can gently sand off the lettering until you end up with something like that, as you see on the finished model. So we've got the final assembly to start doing. You've got the small parts such as the life belt here. We're going to very carefully cut that away with the snippers, give it a little touch of filing there, and then that will fit there over the bulkhead. The same will apply to the wheel and all the other bits and pieces. Finishing off the deck itself, the colours are implied below. You just need these two sections here done in a deck tan type of colour, and they can be hand painted. We now get to the stage when we put all the sub-assemblies onto the main hull to complete the kit. Here the forward section has had the main mast fitted in place, and of course you can remove the holder because you don't need that anymore. Here are the two lower decks for the centre section. This is the aft deck. It's got the grille already fitted in place there. That goes in like that. The forward one goes in like that. Once they're in place, the forward and aft sections can be fitted in and they almost snap in place. So with a little bit of care, right, that's in place, and of course it can be glued. Here's the aft section with its own bulkhead in place, and that goes in like that. And finally the cabin section, again you can remove the holder, that just drops in place between the two lower sections like that. Final part of this is the cover, wet weather cover, which of course is vital. That goes over like that and can be fitted in place, and you end up, once it's all been tidied up, and you end up with the final boat. Here I have got 4 crew in place. There is the pilot steering the ship, and that is the boat that did the magnificent rescue of the Crewmen in 1952, Coast Guard 36500.